Hey Beer Geeks, it may be murky outside, but that might be appropriate, because on this brilliant day, I'm going to be tasting 20 IPAs blind and finally answering that question. Who in the UK makes the best IPA? So yes, I'm back on my blind tasting bullshit once again with 20 hopefully amazing beers, mostly in the hazy IPA style. Not necessarily because that's my favourite, not necessarily because that defines what an IPA is, but because when I started formulating this idea of a video trying to work out potentially who makes the best IPA in the country, pretty much every single example I was coming across was hazy. So out of these 20, there's a couple of beers, a couple of breweries that might be horrified to have their beer described in that way, but this is not as strict a blind taste test as the other ones that I've done. I will be a little bit lenient to style. I will allow for a little bit of the brewery's character to come through, but hopefully we'll still end learning lots about hazy IPA, lots about IPA in general, and lots about who is making really good examples of it here in Britain. So when it came to selecting these IPAs, basically I look for any brewery that's ever received any kind of real, true, broad hype for their IPA. So if they're doing well on Untapped, if people are coming to me and saying they love it, then I've included them as far as possible. And then also breweries that I've come across and absolutely loved their IPAs, I've also put them in as well. So there's obviously going to be some amazing breweries that I've missed, either because I haven't come across them, or because people haven't suggested them, or because I haven't been there and tasted them, or because they just weren't available to get fresh. Because that's been the real challenge with this video and why I've been talking about it on the podcast for about a year before actually filming it. Trying to get hold of all of these beers from all of these hype breweries and have an example fresh has been difficult. It's actually weirdly been impossible to get core IPAs, which was the original idea, from all of these breweries at the same time. So I've basically chosen seasonals that I know have come out a couple of times in the past, so there's at least kind of versions of them. We know that time's been spent reiterating and improving these recipes, or indeed ones that I know that the breweries are super proud of. As always, I've also snuck some surprises in, this time 2 American beers for comparison and to just trick me up. Because most of these are going to be hazy IPAs, I'm going to be looking for bold, big, tropical, exciting aromas. I'm going to look for big, fluffy body, and I'm going to look for drinkability. That could be attained through a touch of acidity, through a touch of bitterness, through being drier than usual, different ways to make sure that I want to take that second sip, which is the criticism often levelled at New England IPAs. So most of you will know the rules from watching other blind taste tests that I've done, but essentially I'm going to be marking these beers out of 10 for aroma, out of 10 for flavour and texture, and then out of 10 for the aftertaste, how that beer finishes, to come up with a score of 30. Generally, I found that a score of 20 marks a good beer, so when you go back to the bar for a second of. So that's what we're really looking for here. I'm super nervous about this taste test because there's a lot of my friends in amongst these beers, and indeed some of our sponsors. So this could go really wrong really quickly, even if the alcohol doesn't get me. But let's get the first four beers in the glass. I've bought these beers, but I do not know what order they will be served. It's IPA time. Okay, so the first four here look almost identical. Oh, I've not got beer clean glassware there. Humble apologies. I should be doing better than that on YouTube. So yeah, they all look almost identical. This one looks a little bit clearer. The rest have similar levels of murk and similar levels of head retention as well, despite my dirty glassware. Okay, so it's a light kind of melon, mango-y, tropical freshness. Doesn't feel big and sticky and unctuous, so probably lower ABV. Or a lighter dry hopping. Smells good, no flaws at all, just a little bit muted for a New England IPA. It's light, it's bright, it's fresh. It's nice, but it's a little bit muted. I'm going to give the aroma a 7. The palate for me is too light, even if it is lower ABV. And the aftertaste is clean, quite minerally, really fresh, which is nice, but not entirely what I'd want for my IPAs. I want to remember them. So it's a little thin and muted, but it's fresh, light, fruity, pretty nice pale ale, I'd probably call that. Right, beer number 2. Right, okay, stickier. Got a kind of overripe pineapple, slightly funky thing. Sappy, dank as well. Quite savoury, almost funky. Oh yeah, and that kind of almost acidic bite comes right through. We're talking small amounts here, like they're all going to be broadly similar, so I'm picking out the differences. Where there was soft juiciness, now there's sharp, pineapple-y, funky, slightly weedy kind of vibe to it. So aroma, I think probably similar. I'd probably want a little bit more kind of tropical character, a little bit fresher tropical character to it. The aftertaste, though, is sticking around. There's a little kind of woodiness to it that I wouldn't necessarily want in my beers. It's just a little bit too savoury for a New England IPA. So some older hops or just some not quite super quality hops. But overall, 20, the kind of beer I go back to the bar for. Okay, the next one. So this one was less hazy than the others. Although as I hold that up, I can't believe I'm saying that because that's a very hazy beer. Yeah, I mean really muted now. I'm having to, you know, you shouldn't have to do this with the New England IPA. It should be leaping out the glass and smacking you around the face. So it's a soft, fleshy mango. That's about it. A bit one-dimensional. There's a nice body to this. I really like that body. It's really smooth. It's velvety. The bubbles are small and moussey. But again, that's like woodiness as well. There's a little bit of like too much dry hop or something that's just lingering that isn't juicy and isn't malty and isn't fresh. It's just almost like a tannin. So this is a big risk with big dry hops. You can get that kind of woody, dry herbal kind of thing. This is smelling good. Loads of overripe mango, verging on over fermented kind of fruit again. The stuff where you sniff it and go, I think that's all right to eat. And yeah, a slightly weedy, dank naughtiness as well. Yes. Beautiful body. Rich and velvety, even more so than this one. Lovely, lovely fruity character, just coating my tongue, hitting my synapse. It's a big, bold, enveloping kind of beer. The only remote drawback is, I think, to get that big body, there is a slight kind of, John the Alchemist describes it as almost like that kind of foamy texture and flavour that you get from like Rennies and stuff like that sort of foams up. And you just get this slightly kind of minerally finish on it that isn't perfect, but I would take it for everything else that's coming. So that's an 8 on the aroma, that's an 8 on the palate, and it's a 7 on the aftertaste. Just, I think something in the water chemistry, just a touch too much, but it's helped create everything that came before it. Nice beer, very nice beer. Right, round 2. Okay, so round 2, something I forgot to say in the intro is that I've also noted down with all of these beers the hop varieties for them. So if I come across a beer where I'm like, I think it's that hop, I'm going to mention that just because I think it's interesting to see if I can pick it out blind. I don't get to do that very often. And also because it might, when we start to look through the answers, start to draw a pattern. You know, maybe certain hops are great or certain hops are more prevalent or something like that to just help us pick out why I've preferred certain beers. Okay, so this has got a different aroma. It's kind of like a blackcurranty red fruit kind of character. Oh, and that's the sweetest of them all so far. So really, really sweet. And as a result, for my taste, is lacking a bit of bitterness to kind of balance that out on the finish. It doesn't feel all that fresh, but really nice aroma, really nice body. 10 IBU of bitterness, I think, would have made a really nicely balanced beer. Huh. So that smells like none of the others either. I remember doing the Macro Pilsner, sort of the bad lager one, and being amazed by how much they vary, given that we say that Macro Lager all taste the same. They really do not. And it's kind of the same here. Everyone says that New England IPA tastes the same, but there's, you know, admittedly there's lots of tropical fruit being referenced, but that's a different road. That's crystallized pineapple. I've smelled that at my nan's, you know? It's got an old school, old lady treat vibe to it. I'm never going to use that phrase again. I don't know what that means. Wow, yeah. And really fresh, really angular, acidic. Acidic is far too strong. It's not even tart. It's got a freshness and a zip to it, which I think a lot of people are putting into their beers now because there's this criticism that these beers get too claggy. So crystallized pineapple is how I would describe that. Really smooth, but it doesn't feel like big and pillowy, but it still feels full-bodied. It's an unusual beer. I guess probably what I'd say is it's kind of oily, right? it's kind of stuck to my tongue, but the actual liquid feels quite light. Like the liquid's gone and it's left something behind. There is a word for that oil that is left behind. Glycerol, I think it is. Feels oily. That oiliness just ruins the crispness of it, I think, a little bit. But still a really, really lovely beer up front, just lacking drinkability on the finish. That is about as milky as beer can and should get. Wow. Ooh, okay, so that's the first one that's got what I describe as bag of hop smell. When you rip open those Silver Miler bags and stick your face in. So I'd imagine an absolutely massive, very, very late cold dry hop, and then probably a very, very fresh beer. Early in my career, we did a video on Unhuman Cannibal, and I met Stu, who was the brewer at Magic Rock at the time, and I asked him what he got from his beer, and he just said hops. And sometimes that's all you can say. Just smells like hops. And that's a shame, because it's come across, there's a top note of onion right at the top, which isn't ideal. Underneath there's a lovely fruitiness, again that kind of glycerol character, very oily, very sweet, but I think that's, yeah, it's got bitterness, it's got sting, probably partly because it's fresh, it's almost green. So the aroma is really nice, I like the aroma, but that onion is distracting and it's too much. I'd still go back to the bar for that. It's an exciting beer, but you've got to want it and you've got to tolerate it. No, there's not a huge amount. A slightly muddy, woody kind of finish to it, which I reckon if I were drinking that in a pub, and look, I mean, it is a beautiful looking beer. It really is. And if I were presented that in a pub on its own, having not had another New England IPA, I think I'd have gone like, you know what, this is decent. But next to these other ones that are presenting so beautifully, it does stand out. And I've been brutal there in my terminology, but it's still scored an 18, which is about triple what Kronenbourg 1664 did. So it's 3 times as good as that. Okay, round 3, the glasses are off. They were getting in the way, and my vision's getting blurred anyway. It might be the alcohol, but I feel like we're getting hazier here, and that is borderline clear. Whoa. Oh my god, okay. Jesus. Straight up. Is it orange and mango Tropicana? Is that the one? I think there's a combination. It's reminding me of breakfast, people. It's a staggering aroma. Orange and mango, lovely. It's my glycol chiller kicking in just there. I'm actually fermenting a New England pale ale just there, so I'm literally surrounded by murk. I'm going to turn that off, and at the end of this filming, not remember to turn it back on. Back to the story. That's one of the best New England IPAs I've ever tasted in my life. It's a 9 on the aroma. It's an 8 on the body. It could be a little bit more fresh. It is thick. It's the opposite of quite a lot of these beers that I've had. It's almost gone too far. But there's none of that issue with the water chemistry. There's none of that kind of claggy, chalky, Rennies kind of character to it. It's absolutely banging. Is that the highest score I've ever given? I'll have to check. I'd say 10 IBU and, I know, 10% too thick. Right, beer number 2 in this round. Also murky as murk gets, but a little bit more colour. In fact, definitely a lot more colour to this than maybe some of the others we've seen. Peachy. Really fresh mango. Almost like green mango, like not quite ready to eat kind of mango. Kind of melony or limey as well, like something kiwi, something New Zealand hop about this, I'd say. Lovely. Well, that, aroma-wise, is not as strong as the one before. It's a very nice aroma. It's an 8. But the body on this is stunning. Like, syrupy, but then cut through beautifully for the finish. Literally nothing left on your palate. Almost like a lager would do. 9 on the palate. Aftertaste. 8, I guess. Are these beers good or am I drunk? Okay, I'm not drunk because that smells terrible. What is that? Um, it's got a slight, you know, the pejorative term for some real ale, like badly cared for, probably originally badly brewed real ale is dishwater. Smells a bit like that. I often use, when I smell that, it's kind of like chicory, like endive, whatever you want to call it, like that bitter leaf. The yeast character and the wort chemistry and the finish is fine. Like underneath that is a well fermented, well cared for, entirely unoxidized beer. But I think the hops have gone horribly, horribly wrong there. Like old hops, bad treatment of the hops. Something just means they've ended up smelling of woods and bitter salad. This beer looks in nice condition, but yeah, like I spotted earlier, I mean, it's not clear, is it? But, you know, I can. Sorry, folks. I can nearly. I can. No, I can't quite see how many fingers I'm holding up, but you could just then. So I have smelled this aroma before in the Colonel tap room, and it smelled of Lemsip. And I know that I bought that beer for this taste test. So I don't know whether I've been looking out for that, because I did not like that hop aroma. Like, the beer was well made. Kudos to Colonel. But I did not like the beer because I didn't like that hop aroma, because it reminded me of blackcurrant Lemsip. I think they try to use, like, not they, Colonel, I think the hop growers are saying, like, is it popping candy or pink grapefruit, or it's got this sherbety pink thing to it. And I've put together the fact that this is not a New England IPA, clearly, with that aroma, and I found Colonel, I think. And yeah, it's got everything that you'd expect from it. It's got to be a Colonel beer. It's got to be a Colonel beer. You know, gentle haze, the origins of London Merc. This, um, it's got a slightly. I think they still use like USO5 or something that's got this slight. USO5, I think, has this kind of vanilla-y, clean vanilla-y soft bite to it. It's not 100% clean like a lager yeast would be, but it's always there, and I can usually tell when it's USO5 or WLP001, one of those West Coast yeasts. And then that is very Colonel to me, that flavour, because not everybody uses that anymore. The colour of it is very Colonel. The fact that it's beautifully made is very Colonel. And that Luminosa just takes me straight back to the tap room when I went there. This is why I have to separate the subjective from the objective, because if you like Luminosa hops, you'll love it. I hate that hop, so I'm going to stick down the middle and say 7. It's 7s across the board for me. It's a decent beer. Colonel? Yeah, good aroma, that one. Really sharp, yeah, pineapple-y kind of character. But this one's rounded out by something a bit more fleshy, a bit softer. Lychee or something like that? I can't remember the last time I had a lychee, but I feel like that's what it smells and tastes like. Everything I've had so far has been front-loaded, right? You look for big, bold fucking aroma, and everything fades away, and you want it to, you know, either be gone or to have some lingering bitterness that makes you want another sip, right? You either want to experience it again, or the bitterness is making you thirsty for another sip. Everything's front-loaded. This one is back-loaded. So I put it in my mouth, and then was like, when do the fireworks start? Swallowed, and that's when they did. So it's a lovely aroma. I'd say the body's a little bit thin for a New England IPA, but the aftertaste is brilliant. It's bold and it's exciting, but it's clean. It's really, really nice. Lemon. Yeah, lemon and grapefruit. Like, things I'd expect from... I don't know, it smells like I'd want all my West Coast Pilsners to smell. That's how I describe that. Really beautiful aroma, just, yeah, really citric and absolutely no kind of juicy character to it. Yeah, entirely different character. So I would presume not a New England style yeast. So New England style yeasts are typically derived from British bitters that have peachy, apricotty, juicy, brambly kind of character to them. That one is with a yeast that I think is very neutral, which is why we're just getting the top notes of the hops, which is citrus, bit of pine, yeah, grapefruit and lemon. Really lovely beer. I'm not going to judge it as a straight new. I judge that as a, what do you call it, like mid-coast mountain IPA, something like that. It's something in that kind of character. And in which case, the aroma's great, the palate's great, and I think it's lacking a bit of bitterness. But that's really nice. What are we on? Beer number 3. Okay, so yeah, again, compared to those two, really different colour. Don't know if that comes out particularly well in camera, but one is almost craft beer channel yellow. Sorry, one is almost craft beer channel yellow. Oh god, and the other one is bordering on orange. Have I put those the right way? Yeah, I have. I have. Oh, okay, so we've gone from definitely not New England yeast to definitely New England yeast. Really peachy and then really tangy, almost like licorice levels of like aromatic, dark fruity, green fruit pastels. Maybe an Antipodean hop in this one as well. Slightly Nelson-y for me. Oh, that's a shame. Beautiful aroma. Absolutely love it. Wonderful palate. It's got that kind of sticky, oily thing that some of the other beers have had. Really coats your palate. Nice fine mousse. 8.8, but then it lingers. There's that water chemistry thing. It's also a little bit too sweet and it needs bitterness. Yeah, just, I mean, a pint of that I think would get a bit tiresome. But if you had a half of that, you'd be very, very happy. There is the tiniest bit of kind of marmitey, savoury character to that. Which could either be autolysis, so dead yeast, but that's pretty unlikely. The other option is just one hop is just presenting something a little bit earthy. The palate and the flavour is good. It's kind of like watermelony. It just feels a bit meh on the finish as well. I think something's gone wrong with the hops there. They're not at their best. They're not presenting at their best. And it's just come across a bit earthy, and that's ruined what otherwise is a pretty decent beer. Okay, so the final round. I definitely feel like my cheeks are getting ruddy, my judgment is being impaired, but actually what I thought was going to be a really tiresome, even though I love New England IPA, I thought my palate would get very, very tired very, very quickly, but actually I'm feeling pretty fresh. Right, well now I'm doubting my Kernel assertion, because that also looks quite a lot like a Kernel beer. Oh my god, and could smell like one. But I know it's Luminosa. That doesn't smell like Luminosa. That is sweaty. That's a sweaty beer. So it's sweaty, it's funky, it's overripe. I would say there is either Simcoe or Mosaic in here. One of the two. Because both of those can have that kind of, as Verdant famously described it, sweat, the 80s gym sock, I think they called it. Wow. That beer just kept going and going and going. So I would imagine that's got a very, very high finishing gravity, but it hasn't got the body to back it up. So it feels like for the first second or two, I was like, this is a lovely, like modern West Coast beer, like pushing at juice, but sweaty and dank. And then it's really bright malt character. But it kept going and got a bit oily and a bit sweet and then didn't have the bitterness. If that was a couple of degrees drier and maybe 20 IBUs higher, that'd be an absolutely fucking banging West Coast beer. Depending on the intention of the brewer, is either very, very close to being amazing or a long, long way from being a New England IPA. So that's watermelon that's been in the fridge for too long, but I quite like it. That feels like I've just eaten a Rennie. Chalky, really, really chalky. Overripe melon, but then like biting a cliff in Dover. I feel bad giving that a 4, but I don't want another sip of that. It's too much. Okay, maybe it's starting to get hard to tell these beers apart. So again, it's that mango, apricotty, peachy thing. And if I'd had this right at the start, I'd have probably been very effusive. So I'm going to stay effusive. It's a good aroma. It's clean, it's juicy, it's fruity. I like it. So that's what I describe as like the monkish style of making beer. Like, there couldn't be less malt character if they tried. The malt is there for the alcohol, for the body, and for the colour. Everything else is a distraction as far as this brewer is concerned. It is all about the hops and the yeast. And I think to some extent that's why it feels a little bit generic, because all you're left with is those two and you don't get the extra character of the malt, which is important in New England IPA. So it doesn't feel satisfying. It feels a bit too light, a bit too thin. There's no sweetness, any of that kind of maillard that might have come from any kind of kilning. Just feels a bit meh. Okay, here we go. Final beer. So you can see, I mean, that one is about as pale and lemony as a beer can get. And again, we've got a lot more colour there. So again, that's in that monkish style of hops and yeast overall. Okay. Okay. So this is gnarly in the best way. You know how beer sometimes takes you to very specific places? It was Nugget Nectar, a beer by Trogs in Pennsylvania that I tried. It's got this old school West Coast funk to it. And on top of that, juice for days. So it's a really complex hop yeast aroma. It's nice. And it's different. And I like it a lot. Yeah, see, it feels like a cohesive thing because there's malt character there. There's a little bit of sticky sweetness from the malt that meets with the pine and the resin and the nuggety character. I very much doubt there's nugget in this. But maybe something like Columbus or something. Or one of the, you know, again, Mosaic, Simcoe, Nelson, something that's got some danger to it. But otherwise, it's all juice on top of that. So it's got layers, it's got complexities, it's got stuff you'll think about as you drink it. I think it's 8s across the board. It's interesting, and I've had people in the comments talk about this. Like, I wouldn't change a thing, but I've given it 24. And I think that's because the perfect beer is in your head, right? And you're never going to achieve that. Nobody's ever going to brew the perfect beer for me. I mean, maybe Pilsner Urquell in the cellars. And on that complete lack of insight, let's get the results. Okay, so it's results time. I've got my glasses back on so I can definitely read everything. And I've got my little taster glass from our Love and Beer Festival, which is happening again this year on October 17th. Tickets are live. Go buy them, 25 quid for your first pour. Homebrew tasters, a free glass and a free tote. And there'll be amazing IPAs. We're working out who's going to be collaborating with whom for this collaborative festival. Before I reveal the results, we'll take a look at this array of beers, which is in the order in which they were poured. I want to take a bet at what's won because I think that'll be quite fun so that you know what my prejudice is, what breweries I think are best, and see how that pans out. So, remembering what was drunk, there were 2 beers in a row that were absolutely stellar, and I would probably say the most likely 2 breweries in there would be Verdant. That would be my first bet. I do think they make the best IPAs, and we'll see if that pans out. The other one, Daya, I would expect to be high. Maybe Baron, my local boys, my local boy, Jack, who I think makes incredible beer. If he was up there, I'd be stoked. It could possibly be. Cloudwater, possibly. So I'm going to say I think those top 2 were Verdant and Daya. I think they're probably the best IPA producers in the country at the moment. Let's see if I am correct. So I need to unhide these columns, which will also reveal the hops and the ABVs. Here we go. Okay. So my next step will be to get the total score and put it into order. Okay, and there we go. So okay. So the best IPA in the country is a beer made in America. Brilliant. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. But it does draw, sorry, of course, it does draw with Verdant colour spreading. Okay, so the best IPA being made in the UK, or certainly on this table, is a Verdant beer. And that's reassuring because that's what I expected, is what I think. And I really genuinely think that the work that's being done down at Verdant would rank with absolutely any brewery in the world. So let's start by tasting those 2, and then we're going to dig into what happened in the rest of the sheet. Right, so they're called Root and Branch. It's not a brewery I've ever had, but when I went into my local beer shop, the beer shop in Hitchin, they said that this was amazing, and they are absolutely correct. I mean, look at it. I mean, it pours like soup, let's be honest. Yeah, I mean, that's just silly. I mean, having now had 20 IPAs, it's a bit much. But it smells amazing. Full on over ripe. Yeah, orange and mango. It's that Tropicana kind of vibe. You know, it smells like it should be incredibly sweet, but it's pretty good. It's hidden any kind of water chemistry that's really built up that body. It's 6.5%. That is not massive for an IPA. That is a stunning beer. And, you know, Brad and I have travelled all over the world tasting New England IPAs. And in my head, you know, nothing immediately springs to mind as being better. So that is effusive praise. Can Verdant back it up? Now that I know what it is, now that I know what I'm drinking, let's see what I said about it. So it's Nectaron, Citra, Idaho. And I said velvety, syrupy, so clean, lots of mango, peach, and NZ Funk. So I guess I was right with the NZ Funk. I didn't pick it up in the Root and Branch, which is Nelson, but this one has Nectaron in spades, and I think it really does. Let's double check that. Which should be sort of nectarine, but also you get this kind of terroir from NZ hops, from Australian hops, from American hops, British, all of these hops. You can kind of group them slightly. They all have some things in common. And yeah, it's a little bit sweaty and funky and almost kind of waxy fruit, I guess, is how I describe what I think is coming from that Nectaron. And yeah, you know, that Verdant character is there, and that comes from Golden Promise. They're actually the second biggest user of Golden Promise in the UK after Timothy Taylor's. So there's that kind of honeyed sweetness that's always there next to the really oily nectarine, I think is the word they prefer to use, kind of yeast character, and then topped up with funk, and Idaho 7 is pretty magical stuff. Let's look at everything else. Okay, so let's look at the ones that came at the bottom before we look at the near misses. So Nothing Bound Reason in Disguise was like biting a cliff in Dover. Yeah, bit of drunk talk there, but let's give it a little go. So this was referring to how chalky some of these beers can come across. So it smelled pretty good, it looked pretty good. Yeah, but I mean a massive chalky, powdery kind of finish, which just destroys any element of drinkability. Next we have Polly's Brew, where we said, oh yeah, so that was where one of the hops had really affected everything else that was going on there. Otherwise, I think it would have been an okay beer. Neon Raptor, so that was the West Coast beer that nearly could. It had a beautiful hop character on the aroma, but it was just too sweet and lingered for too long. Vocation Life and Death, so that's in here because that won our supermarket IPA taste test. And actually that underperformed. I think I gave that 20... Wait, where am I? Supermarket IPA. Oh, it's Love and Hate, not Life and Death. Well, I fucked up there. That got 25, so that got right up there. Oh, that is super frustrating that I've done that. That is super frustrating because I gave that 25. And that would have been up there with the others. So probably I'm going to have to do a little short on Instagram to compare those. I can't compare them because I haven't got more cans of that. I will find a way. Cloudwater, mid-table. Surprised, disappointed at that. Did I get the kernel right? I got the kernel right. That Luminosa hop, even though I don't like it, I won't be one of those people who's like, ugh, Sabro's terrible, but then also says in the same breath, why does New England IPA taste the same? Hop development, hop variety is key to making New England IPA diverse. So I don't like Luminosa, but you might. And we need more diverse hop varieties so that we can create different flavours. Day, a mid-table as well. Fleshy, smooth body, too sweet, needs bitter. Good full English there. Award-winning beer writer. Beak. Beak I probably could have put up there. I would expect them to do extremely well as well. Then we have my boy Jack at Baron, who I think makes some of the best IPAs of any type in the UK. I haven't given him any notes, apparently. I was speechless, Jack. I thought this was a really great beer as well. I think it had real depth and character. So a question I get to ask, which probably no one else in the world does get to, is what can you learn from drinking 20 IPAs in one day? I guess I've learned quite a lot. I think the first thing I'd say that I've learned is that water chemistry is not just important about making a great beer. I've said on the channel before that water chemistry is the difference between a good beer and a great beer. And when I've said that, I've meant that you can make a great IPA, but if you get the water chemistry right, you can make a really, really great IPA. What I've learned is if you get the water chemistry wrong, you can make a pretty terrible beer. So lots of the criticisms down at the bottom are around water chemistry. So you have to be very careful. If you're going to go for that really big calcium chloride character, you have to back it up. You can't do that and then, you know, renege on everything else that needs to go in. What else have I learned? The quality of your hops is paramount. I mean, that's nothing new, but every time there was, even if it was probably one variety that wasn't quite right, then that could ruin everything. I remember being at Pressure Drop recently. Where did Pressure Drop come? 21, mid-table, crystallized pineapple, oily, zippy, and chatting to Sam, who's their head brewer, who had come in a couple of years ago and started to, you know, shake things up and try to improve consistency and quality. And one of the things he said is, really simple thing to do. Every time you crack a bag open, you make notes about what it smells and what it tastes like. Like, it's not just about not throwing it in if you don't think it's right. It's also about recording it. So you've got that data to send back to the hop supplier, the hop grower, or you've got notes. So you could toss it in going, oh, I'm not sure this is quite right, but it might perform brilliantly once it's, you know, been fermented through and packaged. So understanding your hops is absolutely vital. It's not just get the right variety, stick it in. The thing I didn't expect to learn from this is that actually, a lot of the time, the breweries, or rather the beers that I really enjoyed, had some malt character, right? And to anybody that isn't obsessed with New England IPA, that probably makes a lot of sense. You need malt character in beer. That's part of what balance is about. But I was surprised by how much more I enjoyed a beer when there was a little hint of caramel or honey or something that just stitched it all together. Because otherwise it can feel like you're drinking exceptionally hoppy water. And so that's why, you know, Verdant with the Golden Promise. So, I mean, Jack puts his entire recipe on the back. So Heidelberg malt. There you go. So that's why there's some character to that as well. So where somebody's used a slightly individual malt, not just gone like, you know, whatever's the cheapest pale malt they can put in, or their usual supplier. Somebody that's gone, we're going to think about this malt bill and we're going to absolutely nail it, and that will be the base of everything, has resulted in a better beer. And then I guess opposite to most of my learnings is that bitterness doesn't necessarily matter in this style. I've said it on a couple of these beers that it needs more, but you can bring it in other ways by not overdoing the water chemistry, by, in the case of Dare and a couple of others, like maybe tweaking the pH, maybe making it feel a little bit fresher and zippier. Or by maybe, you know, through your hop choice as well, stuff that's a little bit more top note citric rather than all out juice. You can create this sense of drinkability. So if there's any breweries that I missed that you think make amazing IPAs, please do let me know. There are some breweries that I really wish I could have gotten hold of. Let me know your thoughts and come to Love and Beer Festival because, of course, there's going to be amazing IPA there. And listen to our podcast on Friday because Brad and I are going to be going to town on what I learned here about who makes the best IPA in England. And it's either Root and Branch in America or it's Verdant. Cheers.